Let me take you back. It was Christmas 2005 and I was a little over 13 years old when my mother surprised us with a family gift of getting broadband installed for the first time, along with a brand new Packard Bell family computer. At the time I was making friends at school who were heavily into online gaming, like Call of Duty 2, Guild Wars, Battlefield 2 and RuneScape. Nevertheless, I was excited to finally have an internet connection and a PC, even if I did have to share it with my family. As soon as I was able, I bought my first GPU, an NVIDIA FX 5500 AGP card with a whopping 256 megabytes of VRAM, and a copy of Half-Life 2. It's not like Half-Life 2 was the only game I owned. I did have some other cool ones like Empire Earth, Far Cry Instinct and The Sims, but none of these games had the impact that Half-Life 2 did. The Source engine, as it did for most gamers my age, changed a lot about the way we play games, not just in terms of the physics, the style, the graphics, the polish a game could have. In fact, I could talk for a long time about how impressive and revolutionary the Source engine was, but frankly, there's better content out there. What I do want to focus on is that for the release of the Source engine, Valve took an open source approach towards the Source development kit. Steam had the tools and resources readily available for everybody to start creating content. You want to run a server for multiplayer? Sure, here's Source dedicated server. You want to build a custom map? Nice one, here's Hammer Editor. You want to build some new assets? Yeah, we got you, Model Viewer and Face Poser. You want to build your own mod? Well, why the f not? Being still relatively young and not very wealthy, I couldn't afford many video games. But that was okay because there were source mods and they were free. You could just install them through Steam and play away, additional content from people trying to build campaigns with the same reused Half-Life 2 resources, or total conversion mods where people had cobbled together semi-original storylines with substandard audio recordings put together in a completely new experience for players. Some mods were built from Source Deathmatch and were completely multiplayer based, which was great for me and my friends. Some of these mods were complete trash and some of them were genuinely enjoyable that I still remember to this day. But at a time when PC gaming was a new thing for me, they were there and in abundance and completely free. And of course, one of these mods became very important to me. Surprise! It's not Garry's mod just yet, but we will be getting onto that, don't worry. SourceForts is a lesser known and more or less now dead mod for Half-Life 2 Deathmatch. The mod was a team-based capture the flag game but with a twist. Rounds are split into two phases, build and combat, and during the build phase certain panels could be spawned and moved around with the gravity gun, placed by players and then frozen in place to create walls, tunnels, shielding, ramps, sniper nests, or anything else that might help during the capture the flag phase. When the combat phase did start, you had to capture the enemy team's flag, but there was all these custom buildings in the way that you had to circumvent. Panels could be destroyed, but they could also be repaired. There was also the regular deathmatch mechanic on top where you could just outright kill each other. And there was also a class system where classes had different weapons that they could use during the phase and they moved at different speeds. While I'm on the subject, I just want to drop a little mention to SourceForts, because while I was writing this script, some stuff came back to me that I used to love about this game, and at the core, the concept was pretty good. I did love the idea of a team capture the flag with base building and multiple classes, and it was a good game. I'm a little sad the project died, and I also remember that the opening menu had this absolute banger of a track by Kuskan. I'll leave his Newgrounds profile in the description, and you can find all of the early 2000s music he made. Anyway, back to the video. SourceForts cemented itself into our usual gameplay for quite some time, and I did enjoy playing it, albeit I wasn't very good at it. The game, with its small player base, eventually hit a point where you were either considered a noob, or you knew how to grenade, sprint, circle, jump, crouch, 360 teabag the enemy team before they could leave their spawn, capture their flag and be back home in time for tea. And because you'd learned every exploit in the game, you used it without mercy. The divide grew larger and larger, and it drove a wedge into the community until eventually people just started looking for new games. Some of my friends who enjoyed shooting aspects of SourceForts fell heavier into the likes of Counter-Strike Source, Battlefield 2, or Call of Duty 2. But for me, I was never any good at shooters, and I was very frustrated playing those games. But thankfully there was something that had the aspects of SourceForts that I loved. It had the creativity, the community, the building, and it offered so much more.
Garry's mod. Obviously it's Garry's mod this time.
Garry's Mod is a physics sandbox game built for the Source engine starting in 2004. Developed by Garry Newman. Not that Garry Newman. Initially as a source mod, new features and fixes were eventually added in cumulative patches until version 9.0.4 dropped in November the following year, which would be the final free version of the mod and would also be the version that I started playing. Because Valve's source content engine was so open, a sandbox game like Garry's Mod could easily take advantage of the materials, models, sounds, effects and weapons, but also build in additional content that also used source engine. Being able to list every asset in the game files of not just Half-Life 2, but other source content like Half-Life 2 Deathmatch, Counter-Strike and Day of Defeat. Players could play any map, spawn any model or ragdoll, spawn vehicles and weapons, and even spawn live NPCs who would react to the player presence or attack each other in their appropriate in-universe factions. The props spawned could then be manipulated, rotated, placed and frozen in place with a whole suite of constraints and additional physics tools. The game helped turn existing assets from other games into your own personal, weird and wonderful contraptions. With Garry Newman leading a team of devs on the project under the new household Facepunch Studios, the game was growing with alarming popularity, and thanks to the public forum on Facepunch Studios' website, a real community was beginning to develop. What's more is that with the game being based on Source, Valve giving people the tools to build on Source content, and Gmod being able to read content from any additional Source games, people could actually easily and accessibly make more additional content for Garry's Mod. This provided a solid foundation for the mod, and eventually it was given a standalone release in 2006 when Gmod stopped being a mod and started being a game on its own. When Garry's Mod 10 launched under the blessing of Valve's publishing house, it included several huge overhauls in architecture, including one of the biggest features, which was the inclusion of an embedded scripting language called Lua. Lua was not developed for Gmod, which meant there was an existing support for the add-on community, but Gmod was able to run Lua scripting in the game, which opened up a whole new dimension of allowing modders to create scripted entities, which meant game modes, physics and constraints, vehicles, and new maps. If Gmod 9 was a sandbox, Gmod 10 was the whole desert, and you were Iron Man, except your hands shot out puppies and kittens and everybody loved it. What the fuck? Garry's Mod had a lot of things to offer. It was a game that had the collective creativity of not only Valve, but the Source engine, and the modding community at large. I always felt that personally there was something for everybody in this game. If you wanted to play with explosives, play with vehicles, build houses, build robots, fight robots, any of the above, you had the classic sandbox mode, but the modding community with their scripting had introduced so much more in the way of game modes. There was roleplay, where you could live out an ordinary life of a Half-Life citizen in a strange town where cops would beat you down, or you could buy and sell guns to your local mafia, or produce drugs in the criminal underworld, all with a full range of interactive menus, classes, roles, and maps to boot. There was Trouble in Terrorist Town, Murder, Prop Hunt, all multiplayer games where you could join servers and compete with each other to hide, kill, or be killed in clever game modes designed to take the Source engine's FPS system and flip it into something creative, inventive, and fun. You could also use the basic ragdolls in the physics engine and some clever tricks with player models, maps and camera work to take advantage of the Source engine for content creation in machinima, making short movies or even feature lengths like War of the Servers. One of my personal favourites was Space Build. Similar to Sandbox, this had a focus on building, but on maps dedicated to space exploration. Planets could be mined or harvested using equipment that had to be powered, cooled, and controlled. Harsh environments would kill the player if they explored without enough preparation. And of course, all this exploration was done via crudely constructed interplanetary vehicles, created from the random assortment of props from the game menu, and launched from a home planet like a rocket held together with duct tape and a dream. Garry's mod had the power to let your imagination just run away with itself. If you wanted to pretend you were a lonely citizen who paid their protection money to a strong accented European down the hall while decorating your apartment with a sofa and plants from CS Office, you could. If you wanted to strap thrusters and balloons to a thermonuclear device and the G-Man's ragdoll corpse and watch him fly about the map before exploding, you could do that too. As time went on, that accessibility only expanded with Steam creating things like the Workshop, where players could not only upload their mods without the need of source control or versioning software, but could also just subscribe to their favourites with the touch of a button. Not just that, but people could share their creations and their content with each other. The game modes, and additional content encouraged you to be wild, creative and imaginative in whatever ways you saw fit, without the stress of having to fight off enemies in combat or sticking to strict rules of gameplay. You didn't even have to play with other people if you didn't want. Garry's mod worked just fine offline, and if you wanted to work on a project in peace, explore a new map, or just pit hordes of Combine against some antlions and watch them to see who wins, you could. If you go back far enough on my YouTube channel, you won't just find more cringy content that you find now, you'll also find some very old Garry's Mod videos, which consisted largely of me making wacky things that a 13-year-old probably would make, such as a large group of Combine being blown apart by explosions, a ragdoll tied to a rope with a thruster, a shipping container with a roundabout and some corrugated metal attached acting like a helicopter, a dumpster catapult, and finally a large gallows to hang the cast of Half-Life 2. That was just me though. I loved building stuff, and even when I played the game modes that didn't focus on building, I would still build. In my favourite Dark RP servers, I would always be running a shop that had automated drug dispensaries and money collection, or I'd build a booby-trapped safe and vault for the Mafia to store their weapons in, or even just solid doors to keep citizens safe when the Combine came knocking. I loved to build stuff, and that's why I fell so in love with Space Build. Not only was it building with a purpose, but it incorporated my love of space, exploration, and science fiction, especially with the addition of certain science fiction mods. As well as that truly impressive Stargate mod, there was an even more impressive mod you could get for Garry's mod, which I got heavily invested in, called WireMod. WireMod expanded on some of the components of the game and exposed a few others to create a truly unique input-output system that helped build more complex and precise machinery. It introduced another in-game scripting language called Expression, which would allow players to create single-purpose custom functions written in their own code. And as a young person with a love for video games, space exploration, and budding passion for computer systems engineering, Garry's Mod Space Build with Stargate and WireMod was like crack to me.
Straight up crack.
I played for hours on single player designing spacecraft, and even more hours on multiplayer exploring different maps with different people, and at one point somebody made me the moderator of one of their servers because I'd spent so long on there. Playing Space Build was one of the first times I ever remember staying up late to play video games. I always wanted others to experience the joy that I felt playing, and I had a desire to create content, so I started a new YouTube channel dedicated solely to Garry's Mod tutorials. And that channel was fairly popular and it still exists today. And with egg on my face, it actually has more subscribers than my personal channel has ever gotten. It's not something I would say very often because I try to avoid competition, mainly because I'm a bad loser and I don't deal with conflict very well and have some very bad personal character flaws where I don't take criticism very well. But for this reason, I never got too invested in FPS or RTS games, because when I suck and somebody tells me I suck, I dwell on it for days. But Garry's Mod was different.
I liked it. I was good at it.
Like any game, you would still get the occasional troll who would turn their guns on you and try to be as annoying as possible. But unlike Counter-Strike, when somebody starts to shoot at you, your choices are by no means limited to just shooting back. You could just launch an explosive strapped with a vector turret to seek them out across the map, lock onto their coordinates and beam a bomb directly to them, build a teleporter to beam them inside a wall so they begin to suffocate, or you could just vaporize them in their build with a Stargate's unstable vortex strapped to some hoverballs and some wooden plates. There was choice, there was control, there was creativity and so much boundless potential for me, and for a while, I just loved playing the game. exactly when it happened, but I can't play Garry's mod anymore. Not physically, I can obviously still launch the game and play it, but I struggle to do anything on it. I might download some new maps or go and explore the workshop a bit and explore the new maps and spawn the new things I've downloaded, but ultimately I'll fall back on building the same old things in the same old ways. My creative well for this game ran dry a long time ago, and given everything I've said so far, that doesn't really make sense, does it? In fact, just a few sentences ago I used the phrase boundless potential, so where had that boundless creativity gone? There is an easy answer, and it's that in 2011 I started to play Minecraft, which was far more accessible and simple. But looking a bit more into the creative process of humans, I thought I'd do more of an academic study, and did find an interesting study by the University of California that identified that creativity is generally governed by 4 skill sets. The first is capturing new ideas, meaning that when you have a new idea you physically write it down when you have it. Seeking out challenging tasks, finding something you don't have a solution for and trying to devise a solution for it, or trying to think of something you do have a solution for, but taking something out of the equation so you have to approach it in a new way. Then there's broadening your knowledge, reading things, new ideas, watching videos, watching other people do new things, or just exploring new content. And finally, surrounding yourself with interesting things and people. This is more about diversity and originality of subjects within your creative field. If this research is to be believed, I can see why my creativity with Garry's mod dropped off and my love of Minecraft took over. My academic schedule meant that I wasn't having new ideas, and if I did, I wasn't giving them enough time to blossom, and I definitely wasn't writing them down. I wasn't challenging myself when I tried to solve tasks. In fact, I very much got into a habit of creating the same problems for myself so that I could problem solve the same things. You can see it in all my videos. I use the same 3 props to build a vehicle shape design consistently. I never looked at any other YouTube videos or content or forums or other creators to broaden my knowledge, and I never play with my friends anymore because they always wanted to play something else. I could always convince them for a game of Trouble in Terrorist Town, but never for anything specific, and never for that long. This is in complete contrast to Minecraft at the time, which was brand new, challenging, had a ton of enjoyable and fun content to watch and absorb online, and it was playing with my friends and creating a new community, so it's easy to see how my creative efforts fell out of sync with Garry's mod and so easily in sync with Minecraft. I've seen 2 or 3 videos on YouTube about how creepy it is to play some Garry's mod maps alone now. With the sounds and the background effects, you almost expect there to be life in the buildings or someone watching you or a ghostly figure at the end of a hallway, but it's just completely isolated and alone. In fact, I was playing a space build map not too long ago, and I found an ancient ruin on a planet, and I found an artifact inside the ruin, and when I picked it up, zombies spawned throughout the tunnels and I had to fight my way out. Obviously it was a scripted event and I was playing on single player, so it's not like someone was playing a joke on me. But for the first time I felt like there was still life in these old maps, because so often it can just feel like a ghost town. And that feeling of playing on maps on servers once teeming with players, I think it isn't something so easily explained as the Source engine makes you feel weird on purpose. There's definitely something emotional in it for me. When I explore old maps, I remember staying up late playing them. Or the serenity I had watching players float around in space on SB Gooniverse from my Sanctuary moonbase. It's like listening to Kuskan all over again. It takes you back to that time. It's like going back to your old school and walking the hallways, thinking about the whole time you used to be there and how much bigger it used to be back then. As I write this, I haven't yet titled this video, but I'm toying with the idea of theming this like a breakup. In a lot of ways, when you love playing a video game, it is like a relationship. They require time and attention and work, they can make you experience a whole range of emotions, they can change over time, become something you didn't think they were, they can become loving or abusive or fearful or rage-invoking. And as far as creativity goes, Garry's mod is a well that ran dry for me. I can't enjoy it the same way I used to. Garry's mod never changed. I did. It wasn't you. It was me. Garry's mod is by no means a dead game. There are still new mods and updates being released, and servers are still populated with players and new people discover it all the time. Facepunch Studios is still producing content for not just Garry's mod, but also other titles like Rust, and Garry Newman has said that there is a plan to release a spiritual successor with new features and VR support, and have a new name, hopefully moving away from his own personal moniker on the title. And if it does have VR support, since I now have a VR headset, I might actually buy the product again and go back to Garry's mod. Someday. And who knows, it might even rekindle lost love.